Hey, I wanted to do a movie where we talk about and prepare for animating our photos, moving them around in that scan and pan technique, so-called scan and pan technique. And we've looked at examples, so I'm not going to put up examples here, and I'm not going to demo doing it. This is just to really talk through it, think about the process, think about what we're trying to accomplish. Okay, so first of all, you don't want to mess with this until your timeline is in good shape. This work can be time consuming and a bit of a rabbit hole, especially to get it really perfect. And until your timings are right and you're really accentuating with it, it's just going to be a waste of time until your story is put together and your audio is in good shape. The main technique we're going to be using here is called keyframes, and you're probably familiar with keyframes already because they're the little dots that you use to adjust audio. Just know that keyframes are a powerful tool across all kinds of media production. They are generally how you change a parameter over time. So we've already seen keyframes in the pen tool to change volume over time. Now we're going to look at changing things like position and scale over time. But as you get more advanced in animation programs, keyframes are used to work 3D elements and all kinds of things. So just know it's a very powerful concept. When you're moving these photos, they are best when they have a reason. You don't want to get everything moving sideways and right and left and in and out just willy-nilly. You want to think, even if it's a little vague, like, what am I trying to accomplish here? And we'll look at some examples. Can I reveal something? Can I indicate motion consistent with the image? Like, what is the meaning behind this movement? And again, it doesn't have to be precise, but you want to ask yourself that question. And they're going to be great when you have a reason to move the photo in that way. Um, as you're building these, set up your movement and then reduce. Often when we're first learning this, things are moving too rapidly and it's actually distracting. It really is a less is more type of exercise to move these photos. Avoid going right and then on the very next one going left. Avoid going zooming in and the very next one zooming back out. That tends to be kind of jarring. Be cautious around your transitions, especially if you use photo movement and then you also use a dissolve between images. Sometimes it can be awkward if there's like a sudden stop and it's like right at the transition, those sorts of things. So sometimes you need to get it to stop before you transition, before you dissolve. Just take some special care at the transition points, especially if you use a combination of dissolves with these sorts of photo effects. Just a reminder, not required, but these are some of the common frame sizes that you're likely work at. Full HD, the 720, sometimes called mobile HD, 1,000 by 1,000, which is a square size that's common on Instagram, and 1,500 by 1,000, and that will match your photographs. So if you think of the ice skater one, that one was all done. The size of the frame was the size of the photos or the shape of the photos, the aspect ratio of the photos. They were unchanged. And this is important as you're resizing and as you're thinking about it, because if you move an image, you're essentially moving it behind the frame. You're revealing different parts of it. So if you have a frame that's 1,000 by 1,000 and your photo is say 2,000 by 2,000, that gives you all of those extra pixels from which to do your motion with. But your images can also be too big. If you're working at 1,000 by 1,000 and your image is like 6,000 by 4,000, that's too much space to play with. And you wind up reducing it a lot and sort of wasting a lot of pixels. It tends to make Premiere Pro really slow down and not work very well. So this is one of the choices that you're going to make early. Do I want to work widescreen in a format like television or film? Do I want to work square, like something specifically made for social media? Do I want to work in like 3x2, really matching the shape of the photos themselves and keeping them pretty static? I guess it's a good time to do a reminder that this is optional, right? Moving the photos can accentuate your project, can add sort of another voice to it. We saw this in the jazz one. It was really well done, as well as the drag bingo one. They really use those movements really well, but some do it without, and that's up to you. If you do choose to make this technique, I wanted to share some common conventions and tropes. And again, this really just gets at the idea of motivation and making these movements motivated. Here are some conventions for how to do that. So horizontal motion that indicates the motion in the photo. You have a photo of a train or a bike and it's moving across the screen, and you suddenly move that in the same direction that it would be moving if it were not frozen. It can just add that bit of motion to it. Right. It could also be vertical. You have the diver diving off of the high dive and you move it down as they go down, right? Or even reverse it, move it as they go up. But you create that vertical motion on a photo that has natural vertical motion in it. Similar but different is to create vertical motion just to show us more of the frame. So like a photo of a tall building and it's vertical, maybe the rest of your thing is horizontal, but this one photo is vertical. Rather than making it small and trying to fit it in with the black bars, you can make it the width of the screen and then just move it, animate it, going up as if we're looking, as if where the motivation is like our perspective, right? Like our point of view, looking up to the top, and that's effective. To a deal, to let's just say detail, zoom in to draw attention to a detail. So this would be something like, I think we saw this in the drag brunch, a big thing, and we zoom in and we indicate the money in someone's hand, or we indicate and we draw our attention to one of the details in the image, sort of getting both a wide shot and a close up out of one image using this zoom effect. And again, you don't need a lot. You're just sort of moving toward the object that you want to highlight can just give us enough to direct someone's attention to see a certain detail. You could also reverse that, right? You could start on, one piece of garbage, zoom out to show that it's just covered in garbage everywhere, right? Or maybe start on the empty trash can, zoom out to see all of the litter around, right? We're just revealing something with our zoom. One that's really can be effective is almost goes without being noticed and just gives us a little more screen time to sort of linger on a shot. And it's like a very subtle zoom in, and you almost wouldn't notice it unless you're really looking for it. And you just move something, say, from like 90% to 95%, and it just gets that little drift in, and it just seems to give us a little more time, seems to signal the viewer like, look at this, watch it, not any particular point, but like, let's spend a second here. So that subtle small zoom in can be really nice. Yeah, and similar to zooming out, we can move toward an object to sort of change our attention. If you think of the photo I showed back at the beginning of this with the couple looking at each other, well, one thing to do would be to start on one of them and you see their eye lines looking that way, and then you move over to see what they're looking at. Yep, almost like a reaction shot. You can rotate these, right? And I would say, like, with care, that's a pretty aggressive movement, but we saw one, I think, with records and a lot of rotating motion because it was appropriate. Like, it was giving us the feeling like the record spinning. You could like make the record spin and then stop so you see the title. Things like that could be interesting. The bicycle wheel could rotate, but these are rarer, right? It should really be something that's rotating in the real world. It really gives us that feeling. Yeah, the center of a record. Okay, I hope that gives you some good ideas of ways to use this. I would stress just a couple things. One is, don't take your first photo and spend 3 hours trying to get it animated perfectly. Tell your story first. Maybe make some notes. Oh, I want to move this one this way. Make this a reveal. Give yourself some space on the timeline, then go back and do it. And again, motivated. If you ask yourself, why do I want to move this photo? What's the meaning behind the movement? And that's the way that these work out the best.